Donald Trump is accused of meddling with ceasefire negotiations. Ain't that a crime? Watch.
One thing that the Harris campaign would love is if President Biden would bring home a ceasefire in the Middle East right now between Gaza and Israel. And we know that Secretary of State Blinken is over there right now working with Netanyahu. The reporting is that former President Trump is on the phone with the Prime Minister of Israel, urging him not to cut a deal right now because it's believed that would help the Harris campaign.
So as they're mocking Donald Trump and lamenting the fact that he killed the border security bill because he thought it would help his little campaign, little seems to be the word of the day after President Obama's 44th speech last night was fantastic. And so what does he do? He turns around and now he's over there talking to this other guy who perhaps has similar issues. He doesn't have 34 felonies under his belt, but he could, which is why some speculate he continues to, well, they're saying war crimes. And remember, remember that he was brought up on some stuff too. The longer he keeps it going, the freer he thinks he is, like the guy he was on the phone with. Okay, it's just that simple. Donald Trump has been accused of violating federal law by allegedly calling Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss the ceasefire deal the U.S. is helping to negotiate between Israel and Hamas. The nerve of this guy, the gall. Who are you and who do you think you are? Oh, that's right, white privilege. And you've been getting away with it. Anything you say that's outlandish, anything you've done, you just keep getting away with it. So why not call up Bibi and interfere in this to try? I'm desperate to keep Kamala. How does he say it? How does he say it, Tehran? Her name. Is that how he's saying it?
I don't even think he can pronounce her name. I don't think he pronounces most of the country's names correctly. President Trump, unfortunately, is not always the best when it comes to pronunciation or enunciation. But what he is really good at doing is meddling in things that are basically none of his business. President Trump, and once again, I am not one of those people who's like, oh, he's a criminal. I am a firm believer in innocent until proven guilty. However, you use the term white privilege. I will throw in also it's Republican privilege. Why? Because this is very similar to what President Reagan did in the Iran hostage crisis, where the coincidence of the hostages being released January 20th, 1981, on the same day, minutes after he was sworn in. As a person named Tehran, trust me, I'm extremely familiar with this situation. The idea is meddling in affairs that are best for your party, irregardless of if they're best for what's America. And that's what the problem and the problematic situation is because are you meddling in for your own legacy or that of the United States of America?
With millions watching and many people benefiting from this program called Indisputable, we just need 1% of the viewers to become a paid member so we can continue to bring this content to you. Now back to the show.
And I do wish that more politicians cared more about being American than they did about being Democrat or Republican. And that's what we're looking at here.
Tehran, he's unapologetic in using human suffering, human bodies, if you will, for marketing purposes. It's for marketing purposes. It's craziness.
Which I'm not against. I'm a fan of the Kardashians. But in this case, this is despicable.
Me too.
You can't use your own body, not other people's. No. Stop playing games with people's lives. People's actual lives are at stake. Hostages have been taken. Thousands of people, Palestinians, are being killed. This is not a conflict that should hinge on who wins or loses. This is a conflict that should be resolved, period, for the interest of global peace.
When you've never been brought to task, when you haven't suffered, Mr. Bone Spurs, you did not fight for your country. Now that's just trading. Trading. What's the value here? Let's give you more. Former president allegedly made the call August 14th, according to Axios, which cited 2 unnamed US sources who were briefed on the call. Next day, however, Netanyahu's office denied that the call took place. Trust him either. In a statement quoted by the Times of Israel, spokesperson said, contrary to media reports Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu did not speak yesterday with former President Donald Trump. Well, that just could mean it, with the time difference, it's past midnight. You didn't have to put in yesterday. Did they talk? Did they talk or not? Okay, so I'm skeptical right there. If Trump did make the call, he would potentially be breaking the law, as the Logan Act, enacted in 1799, prohibits unauthorized private citizens from negotiating with foreign governments on behalf of the U.S. American muckrakers, an organization that states it seeks to hold politicians and officials accountable. They've filed a request now with the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Department of State. That reporting from Newsweek, and I wonder if the Department of Justice will have the guts, or will they ride this out? It took so long for you to investigate Donald Trump. Now you're running. Hey, can we stay? Say what now? Come on. If this happened, this is a big deal. People will die. They're dying right now. A big deal. Okay? You run and investigate that. Netanyahu met with Trump at his Mar-a-Lago residence late July, when the Israeli prime minister was in the U.S. to meet with President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. Press conference last Thursday. Trump said of Netanyahu, he knows what he's doing. I did encourage him to get this over with. No, you didn't. It has to get over with fast. Get your victory and get it over with. It has to stop. The killing has to stop. Later that same day, Trump criticized the Democrats' calls for a ceasefire. He's all over the place. I will give Israel the support that it needs to win, but I do want them to win fast, he added. Trump went on to threaten to arrest what he called pro-Hamas thugs and jihad sympathizers. He just says nonsense, gross nonsense, but it's just all over the place. Such tactic used by Trump brings parallels to theories about how the Iran hostage crisis, see, Tehran, you're right. It's exactly the playbook here, and it's sick. The Iran hostage crisis affected the 1980 presidential campaign between Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan, known as the October Surprise. Many have suspected that someone close to Reagan's camp was working against Carter's efforts to free the hostages until after the election. Hostage crisis in Iran blighted Carter's presidency and his re-election campaign. And with the hostages still unreleased on election day, 1980, the incumbent lost. He lost badly to Hollywood's Ronald Reagan. And that's really the rub here. We forget, we don't know our history, and I understand it's being kept from so many of us, so many school kids. You forget that it just repeats itself. Alarm bells should be sounding all over the world now if this call took place and it's accurate. Am I being too much? Am I doing too much here? Or is this this is crazy?
Let's remember the parallels between Ronald Reagan and President Trump, and not just think of it as the parallels of their presidencies, because President Reagan was actually an extremely effectual president, even though I don't always support all of the policies that he enacted. However, they're both extremely good actors and both deserved Academy Awards. Ronald Reagan, of course, was a person who was up for one. Donald Trump should get 3, just for acting the way he does and somehow creating and manifesting this notion that he's doing this for the people. Clearly, he's doing a lot of these things simply for himself. We've seen this time and time again. That's President Trump's MO. The actions and the similarities between the Iran hostage crisis. And by the way, Sharon Reed, I would be remiss as a person named Tehran if I didn't correct that.
I know.
Letting you know it's Iran. Probably half the reason why there's a fight. Probably half the reason there's a fight.
I did Iraq, Iran. I've done it my whole career. It's just lazy.
I completely understand.
Thank you.
It's not.
I deserve it.
It's up to us to pronounce it correctly. Yeah. And so that fact of how it's similar. What's even more similar is, how did President Trump call Netanyahu? Are they talking on a regular phone? Because if they are, that's a problem. Did he slide in his DM? Are they hitting each other up? Did President Trump call Prime Ministers Prime Minister Netanyahu's cousin Avi, and then talk to him, and then he.
Probably.
I mean, they're speaking.
Or they sent Jared Kushner. Maybe Jared Kushner was over there. What's this signal people are using? Maybe I don't know how they communicated.
Yeah,
okay.
Is it, Kristen? I do want to say in regards to the Logan Act, though, let's remember the law is one size fits all, and it's a slippery slope. So if we prosecute President Trump under the Logan Act for possibly meddling in these affairs and interference, then remember we'll have to do that for any other former president. If President Obama, for example, speaks to somebody to get something done in the future, that would also be a crime. So let's be mindful with just throwing laws at people and start using possibly this thing that I wish was more common, which is just common sense.
Yeah, that's right. And humanity, a little bit of decency goes a long way. You're up to no good. And listen, I don't believe the law is going to catch up with him anyway. And you're right, it's a slippery slope, but I don't know that a 78-year-old white billionaire is really worried about that slope. Okay, I'm waiting for the part where after he loses in November, and again, it's a tight race, that then we start hearing from all sides, well, just let's move on. Let's not put him away. He remains a threat. I'm happy to let a lot of people move on. I don't like prisons. I know what's going on here, okay? It's, you go to prison, you get a free pass for the same thing. So I don't like it, but this guy's a continuing threat. He will not stop.
What do you mean, Sharon Reed? What do you mean? He's a 78-year-old white billionaire like the rest of us. He's just like one of us.
He's just like
us. He's just like one of us.
Right.
Not like us.
Exactly.